Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
I was the daughter who didn't obey. In our house, obedience wasn't just expected, it was survival. My father, a stern patriarch from Bogota, loved to remind us that he had crossed a border for us to have better lives. My mother, with her rosary beads and endless sighs, made it clear every day. Good daughters became nurses or teachers, married a boy from church, lived 5 streets away, and gave them grandchildren before 30. I was 31 and had done none of it. Instead, I lived 2 cities away, managed a chaotic marketing team, and worst sin of all, had fallen in love with a man they had never met. A pilot, of all things. To them, pilots belonged in movies or emergency rooms, not in the life of their eldest daughter. When I called to tell them I was engaged, I stupidly hoped it might bridge the distance between us. Engaged? My mother's voice crackled over the line. To who, Estelle? That imaginary boyfriend you mentioned last Thanksgiving? I swallowed hard. His name is Cruz. Cruz Mendoza. He's a private pilot and a big businessman. A beat of silence. Then my father snorted so loudly I flinched. If he's real, why haven't we seen him land yet? He sneered. A pilot who can't even fly home to meet us? He's busy, I said weakly. He travels constantly. Too busy for family? My mother cut in, voice sharp enough to slice bread. Maybe because he doesn't exist, Estelita. Her use of my childhood nickname made it worse. I pressed my forehead against the kitchen cabinet, staring at the blinking coffee machine like it held answers. You never did listen, she continued. Now you're inventing men to justify your choices. I'm not inventing anyone. I exploded, surprising even myself. You just don't want to admit I made a life without you telling me how. There was a long, trembling pause. Then my father muttered, such a shame. Adrian, he listens. He honors his family. And just like that, they drove the knife deeper. Adrian, my golden cousin. Medical school graduate. Fiancé to a senator's daughter, hero of every family gathering. Adrian, who had once gotten a standing ovation at Christmas dinner for bringing the right wine. Maybe you should come to Adrian's engagement party next month, my mother said coolly. See how a real family celebrates real success. The call ended with a hollow click. I sat in the darkened kitchen afterward, phone still in my hand, heart pounding. I thought about not going to the party, sparing myself the humiliation. But then a crazy thought curdled through my brain, slow and wicked. What if I didn't spare myself? What if I showed up and proved them wrong? The mansion gleamed under 1,000 fairy lights, like something out of a movie I didn't belong in. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, women with glossy hair and men with watches that cost more than my car. This was Adrian's world, the perfect son, the perfect fiancé, the perfect life. I smoothed down my navy dress, feeling like a cardboard cutout of confidence, and stepped inside. The music, the laughter, the clink of champagne glasses, all of it crashed over me. I spotted my parents near the grand staircase, my mother already deep in conversation, my father laughing too loudly. When my mother's gaze caught mine, her smile froze into something brittle. She nudged my father. His eyes narrowed. They were taking mental bets, I could feel it, on how quickly I'd embarrass them. I didn't flinch. I smiled, waved, and drifted toward the ballroom. You came, a voice drawled beside me. I turned to find Adrian himself, impeccable in a gray suit, glass of scotch in hand. Wouldn't miss it, I said lightly. He leaned closer, smirking. And where's this mysterious pilot fiancé of yours? Or is he, between flights? My stomach twisted. I steadied my voice. You'll see soon enough. Adrian chuckled like I'd just told him a good joke and melted back into the crowd, leaving a trail of expensive cologne. The evening churned on, each moment ratcheting my nerves tighter. I endured side glances from relatives, heard the word imaginary hissed more than once. The engagement toast loomed like a guillotine. Finally, the MC tapped the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses. Adrian's father spoke first, bragging about lineage, respect, duty. Then my uncle took the microphone, and hell bloomed. He grinned, winking at the crowd. And let's not forget to wish good luck to all the imaginary fiancés out there. May they find a good pilot school in heaven. Laughter erupted. My parents laughed the hardest. My cheeks burned, my chest hollowing out. I saw Adrian smirk at me over the rim of his glass. The microphone passed to me like a torch on fire. I stood, straightened my back, took the mic, and smiled sweetly. Family is everything, I said, voice clear and steady. But sometimes, the ones meant to lift you up are the first to doubt you, the first to laugh. I looked directly at my mother. Some of us learned that real support doesn't come from blood. It comes from belief. I pause, letting it sink in. And sometimes, belief can fly. Right then, the low hum of an engine cut through the night. Heads turned, confusion buzzed through the crowd. Outside the mansion's glass doors, a bright light streaked across the dark sky. A sleek Cessna circled once, its engines roaring like thunder, before gliding toward the open field next to the estate. Screams of disbelief and the clatter of heels on marble echoed as people rushed outside. I didn't move. I stood perfectly still, holding the mic in the stunned silence. Adrian's glass slipped from his hand, shattering at his feet, and I smiled, knowing this was only the beginning. The field behind the mansion exploded into chaos. Men shouting, women shrieking as they stumbled over manicured lawns and stilettos, clutching their designer gowns. The Cessna taxied to a smooth stop, its polished silver body gleaming under the floodlights. A hush swept over the crowd as the door opened. And then, him. Cruz descended the metal steps with a casual grace that sucked the breath from the world around him. His dark blue suit was pressed. His aviator sunglasses were in place despite the night. His knee-length boots were polished to a shine, and his bandana added glitz and glamour to his whole look. He wore a soft grin, the kind that said he owned the sky he rode in on, and maybe the ground too. My heart slammed against my ribs. Would he pull it off? He moved through the stunned crowd like a king returning from war. And when he reached me, without hesitation, he took my hand, kissed it gently, and said, voice carrying just enough for everyone to hear, "Forgive me, mi vida. Had to finish a little multi-million-dollar deal in Rio before I could land at your feet." A collective gasp swept through the relatives packed on the marble patio. My mother's wine glass tilted dangerously. Cruz straightened, turning to face my father, who looked like he might swallow his own tongue. "Señor Ramirez," Cruz said smoothly, extending his hand. "It's an honor to finally meet the father of the woman who stole my heart." For a beat too long, my father froze. Then, as if driven by invisible strings, he shook Cruz's hand, stiffly, begrudgingly. "Pilot, huh?" My uncle barked, his voice slicing the tension. "Or just a good actor?" Without missing a beat, Cruz laughed, a rich, easy sound, and switched effortlessly into rapid Spanish, throwing in technical aviation jargon about Cessna models, engine compression ratios, and landing protocols. By the time he was describing his latest project consulting for a private airline, my uncle's mouth had flapped open like a broken door. Beside me, Adrian watched it all unfold, his smugness curdling into something closer to fear. Cousin Vivian whispered too loudly, "Dios mío, he's real," as if she had discovered fire. I lifted my chin, meeting my mother's dazed stare across the crowd. Her face, pale, stricken, proud, and furious all at once, was everything I had waited years to see. Later, as Cruz wrapped an arm around my waist and we strolled back toward the house, he murmured, "Was that dramatic enough for you, mi reina?" I grinned without looking at him. "They're not breathing yet. Why don't we dock the yacht next time?" Above us, the stars shuddered behind thin clouds, but down here, the storm had just begun. The mansion's ballroom, moments ago a cathedral of whispered mockery, now buzzed with raw, unsettled energy. Faces that had once curled into sneers now beamed with brittle smiles. Glasses clinked nervously. I could feel it, the shift. It wasn't respect yet, but it was fear. And sometimes, fear was the first step toward respect. Vivian approached first, clutching a flute of champagne like a lifeline. "You have to forgive me," she gushed, fake laughter coating her words. "We thought you were exaggerating." I gave a cool smile. I wasn't asking for forgiveness. Adrian, not one to be outdone, swaggered toward Cruz, hand extended. "Nice entrance, man. Hollywood stuff." He laughed too loudly, then muttered under his breath, "Guess he showed all of us." For once, I didn't need to shrink or explain or make myself small to fit into their narrow expectations. I simply stood taller, feeling the weight of years of scorn lift from my shoulders. Near the dessert table, I caught my mother watching. Her eyes were glassy, her mouth pressed thin, Finally, she beckoned me with a slight tilt of her head. Against my better judgment, I went. We stood in a sliver of shadow, the hum of party noise muffled by the thick velvet curtains. I didn't know, she said hoarsely, not quite meeting my eyes. I thought you made him up to punish us. I let the silence hang heavy between us before answering. No, Mama, I just stopped asking for your approval. Her lips trembled. Whether with anger or regret, I didn't know. Maybe she didn't either. You chose someone outside the plan, she whispered. I chose myself. I corrected the old wounds smarting but no longer bleeding. From behind us, Cruz called out gently, Estelle, Carino, they're about to cut the cake. I turned toward him, my heart lighter than it had been in years. Go, my mother said, voice cracking. Be happy. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't absolution, but it was more than I'd ever been given before. As Cruz slipped his hand into mine and we rejoined the celebration, I felt the tides inside me shift too, no longer crashing against rocks that would never move. I was sailing towards something new, something mine. As we turned to leave, the sudden wail of police sirens slashed through the night. The music inside cut off mid-song, and the entire party rushed out into the street, heels clattering, jackets flying. My heart slammed painfully in my chest. A black and white patrol car skidded to a stop, officers jumping out, hands near their holsters. Step away from the aircraft, one shouted. I froze. The weight of every doubt my family ever planted in me came crashing down. Had I been wrong to trust Cruz? But beside me, Cruz only laughed, a low, warm sound that vibrated against the tension crackling in the air. Relax, my amour, he said smoothly. The mansion's valet manager had called the cops. Someone reported a suspicious landing. Without hesitation, Cruz pulled a document from his jacket and handed it to the approaching officer. Landing authorization, signed and approved, he said calmly. The officer scanned it, eyebrows lifting. He turned, frowning, to the gathering crowd. Everyone's eyes swung to Adrian, who stood near the mansion steps, arms crossed and grinning wide. I had a feeling she'd need a runway tonight, Adrian said with a wink. Laughter broke out, startled and relieved. Relief flooded me so fast it made me dizzy. Cruz helped me up into the Cessna, and with a final wave to the now cheering crowd, my family, we took off into the ink-black sky. Below us, I could see them waving, small figures under a sea of blinking fairy lights, like schoolchildren seeing off a hero. For the first time, I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't begging to belong. I belonged to myself. And up there, with Cruz's steady hand over mine, I finally, truly soared.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.